happening with the pump fake and one dribble inside to the long two, and he makes it. That's been his game his whole career. But look at him smiling. We go, my bad. The long two.
Welcome to another episode of The Long Two. I am Pete Rogers. He is Natty Wallach, and we are a Carmelo Stanthony podcast. And occasionally, and probably more regularly, we'll talk some fantasy basketball. Natty, how you doing today?
Howdy and what's up? I'm okay. Go America.
Go America indeed, and go NBA, because we, in a little bit over than a month, are going to have NBA games again. And I don't know about you, Natty. I know player safety for those who did play in the finals. I saw somewhere where it's like they'll have 70 days between playing basketball and playing the 2021 season. But I'm pretty stoked that we're about to get a NBA offseason compressed into like 30 days. I am here for it personally.
It's just another example of how fucking crazy all of this is and how we have to adapt. And let me just say, let me repeat what we said before the bubble was happening and while people were planning it, and even at the beginning of it. Things change, man. Like, we're going to have a long, dark winter. It's going to be really bad, and all of these plans are subject to change. But the fact that they are adamant about coming back and being ready for Christmas leads me to believe that the Tim Duncan rule is going to be in full effect this year, by which I mean, like, your stars can rest unless it's national television. Because, like, I mean, it is completely unfair to the teams that did well, that went to the final. You know, like, we keep mentioning the Lakers whenever we're talking about, like, oh, they don't have much rest time. Like, Miami, too. Come on.
Yeah.
They have injuries. Like, things that and they're getting disadvantaged, I suppose, because they did well. You know, like, it's a weird winner's tax, and we're not going to cry for them. But, you know, they have legitimate gripes. But fuck it, man. Let's go. Let's go, go.
Baby.
It's a Mad Max movie. Fucking roar those engines, man. I want to see some weird shit.
That's the fucking spirit. All right. Well, we're going to talk about some fantasy basketball today. We're going to talk about players who are coming off of serious injuries and kind of setting our expectations for them. Before we get into that, though, Natty, I know I told you to look at it. Did you go and look at the Sixers City jersey for this year?
I sure did. Did you see that they hid "Trust the Process"?
Did you see that they took the Philadelphia cream cheese logo and put it across the front?
First of all, no Liberty Bell, as far as I can see, which is just dumb. Philadelphia, USA. I mean, I get it, but, like, come on. Yeah, they're not great. They also just don't look like they don't like. If you took away the team name,
the Philadelphia, what the fuck am I looking at?
Yeah,
it looks like houses lit up for Christmas.
Right. It could be Lexington, Kentucky. I don't know. Like, that just sort of looks like somebody's neighborhood. But
I get that. There's been a whole push from, like, Sixers PR for being like Ben Simmons convinced them to go wear black jerseys again, and as a nod to, like, the Allen Iverson era Sixers. And it's like, if you want to make a nod to the Allen Iverson Sixers, let's come out and, like, wear those jerseys. Like, let's not just have black jerseys that say Philadelphia on them and some weird, like, glow in the dark houses. Like, let's fucking actually have the classic Sixers logo, and let's do some cool mods with that. I mean, come on. You've seen, I do basketball and just general jerseys. I mock up a bunch of jerseys.
And
on
they're
my
great,
Instagram.
always.
Thank you. Appreciate that. But, like, and there's a whole bunch of people who've done that, who just, like, you've seen, there's so many good combos of taking, like, the old Sixer stuff and modifying it for the now. And when you see jerseys like the Spurs City jerseys this year are gorgeous. Oh my God. They finally include the Fiesta colors, and they're just pristine and beautiful. It's just like, Sixers, what are we doing here? You are just setting yourselves up for failure. That being said, the Daryl Morey Sixers have me already so excited. So but
the jerseys are sort of like a metaphor for the dysfunction of that team. Like, they were excited about it, and they hid shit, and they thought they were clever. And I haven't read anything that says that Daryl Morey like won't be conquered by Sixeritis, which seems to happen to everybody that goes like he's going to conquer Philadelphia. Philadelphia won't conquer him. And a little skeptical, but the fact that the jerseys are such a big deal sort of just makes me think like sneakerheads conquered the world along with comic book nerds, and I'm half of that. But everybody loves designing, which is great. And I used to hate like the new jerseys coming out all the time because I thought it was just a corporate cash grab. Exhibit A, the Pistons teal jerseys, which still, oh man, like it's Trump and then it's the teal jerseys right there. It's 1A and 1B.
Damn, that's some harsh words for the teal
There have
jerseys.
I've seen some cool, like, I'm not calling them throwbacks, but like teal designs for, retro Piston shit. It's just that, like, if you want to honor AI and the last time your team went to the finals, maybe you should actually put something in there that seems similar to either AI or that, like, hide AI in the fucking logo. Like, what's wrong with you?
Hell yeah.
Also, if you actually want to trust the process, don't hide it. Like, it should have just been like a bar sign or something in one of the house. Oh God, it was such a miss.
It was such a miss.
But when you do this every year, like you're gonna have some misses.
That's super true. That's super true. And it is something where it's like at a certain point you only have so many things to draw on for a city jersey. So I'll be curious to see kind of what happens ultimately with that series, whether or not they keep it going city or if they ultimately kind of like maybe spice it up and try to do something like a retro one where everyone's quote unquote city jersey is just like a kind of modified retro. Well, I mean, that's the one thing that the NBA has over any other sport right now is their jersey and the creativity that goes into those jerseys. And yeah, some of them are misses. And this podcast. I mean, let's be honest. This is the number one thing the NBA has to market is this podcast.
Stop.
Yeah, sometimes they're misses, but at least they're doing like really cool creative things on these jerseys as opposed to like the NFL or NHL where you're just getting the same old over and over and over again.
And man, the misses are just as instructive because good ideas can happen in a room, and then as soon as that idea leaves that particular room, it's garbage.
Right.
Like, you remember the DC's old like gold uniforms?
Yes, I do.
And how they like sort of like you could see why someone would be like, "Oh, this will look cool," and they just kind of looked cheap.
Yeah.
But I kind of always wanted Philadelphia, like if you were going to go metallic, and I do sort of feel like teams should have a metallic cover, like comic books used to do. But they could go like bronze and just have the bell, like the broken bell, like that's the big jersey. And it's like
you're big on this broken bell. If it's not included, Natty doesn't want a part of the jersey.
Dude, I like Old Town. I mean, whatever. There are a few nationally identifiable things from Philadelphia, so you should lean in instead of like, hey, here's a black background that doesn't have any Philadelphia buildings in it, and we hid TTP. Like they just look like they could be from anywhere. So who cares?
Yeah, which just to me when I first saw it next to a bunch of houses was like, oh, did they TP these houses?
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, totally. Also, did the bosses notice, or is this one of those like Disney animator hidden things where, you only see it once the VHS comes out? You're like, oh, that's a penis. Got it.
Oh, Scar says fuck when he hits, or is it sex when he hits the, I don't know. Something in the line.
Showing our age, Pete. Showing our age.
I know. All right, well, let's get into some fantasy basketball talk. We're going to talk, what do we got? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys, all coming off of serious injuries, all coming off of kind of missed seasons, and setting our expectations for 2021 basketball, and just kind of where we're feeling like these guys should go in your fantasy basketball drafts and redrafts. And I didn't personally, but maybe you did, Natty, kind of throwing out maybe some stats that we would kind of expect from them. And let's start with the guy who I think the biggest person to talk about, obviously, is Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant coming off of his ruptured, torn, exploded Achilles, early 30s, playing on a new team. What are your vibes for Kevin Durant this year in Brooklyn in his first season wearing the Nets black?
Okay, KD's last well, it was just 2 years ago. 2018-19 for Golden State. He played 78 games. He averaged 26 points per game, 5 3-point attempts with a 35 3-point percentage, 6+ rebounds per game, which was his lowest in the last 11 years, by the way. 6 dimes per game and 1+ blocks. That's pretty fucking good. He
Good
is now
at
going to be
basketball.
on a right. That seems, all of those seem good, and when they're combined, it seems really good. KD at 100% is a lock to be a top 10 finisher in fantasy basketball, I think.
Yep.
And the fact that he had those numbers with a team that had 2 Hall of Fame shooters, like he had that amount of volume even with Steph Curry and even with Klay Thompson. I think KD and Kyrie on the Nets are obviously the focal points. They'll both be given the opportunity to regularly, score 40 points a game if they want to. Like they'll get the full Harden effect. It's their team. No one else. I shouldn't say that, but the other players just don't have as much cachet as KD or Kyrie, even if they brought in a third star. Like, it's hard to think of a third guy that would consider themselves the alpha above Kyrie. I don't know.
I don't think. I mean, like, unless you're like somehow magically getting Anthony Davis on this team, like I don't.
Well,
know
like
who
if they
else.
got Harden somehow, I don't think they can. But like a player like that,
maybe he would see himself above Kyrie.
but like Kyrie has a chip and has made one of the most important shots in NBA history, and Harden, hasn't. Although it's funny, if Chris Paul went to that team, I feel like he would be in charge. But that's just sort of Chris Paul.
True.
But Kevin
Chris
Durant
Paul,
is going to be like, I don't think Kevin Durant is going to be the number 1 pick overall in fantasy, but I do think that there's a chance he could end up being the number 1 player when it's all said and done.
Would you let him, if you were drafting, would you let him fall out of the top 10 picks?
Shit. I mean, that's totally context dependent, Steve. Fucking Pete. That just boggled my mind, because then I just started, like, the note card started flipping. Okay, Peter. I don't think that you can.
Yes, that's I totally agree. I think Kevin Durant, even though he's coming off an Achilles injury, even though he's 32 years old, like,
come on with that. Like,
he's a top 10 pick. He's a top 10 pick no matter what. He is going to get you rebounds. He is going to get you assists. He is going to get you points. He is going to get you fucking defense. I mean, the guy has been averaging like almost 2 stocks a game for the last 4 years now. So, like, he's going to get you everything that you want, everything that's required to be a number 1 guy on a fantasy team. I know some people might be worried. The Achilles injury is something that, like, we've seen it a few times. It does destroy people's careers.
Sure.
It does completely change how a player plays. But for me personally, I'm like, call it blind optimism or blind faith. But I can't.
You're just a blindfolded man shooting a gun to the sky, buddy.
Amen. The Slim Reaper is going to is going to do what he does best. And I just think that his game, maybe it'll evolve, but he's still such a deadly shooter at fucking 7 feet tall. I mean, God, I was watching highlights, and it's just like, when Kevin Durant wants to shoot, he will shoot. No one's going to ever block a shot of Kevin Durant. So I think if you are drafting him outside of the top 10 picks, like if he falls that far in your drafts, you need to start playing with people who know basketball, because it's preposterous to think that he's not a top 10 pick. And yes, there's injury risks, but there's injury risks with everyone. So let's calm down about that.
I do think that a pretty good argument for not taking him in the top 5, like for letting him fall, is that you're not sure how he's going to be managed. If this is going to be a compressed season, you would assume he doesn't play back-to-backs. Maybe they have a hard minute cap on him. So while his averages might be great, he might not get those minutes that get you that sweet volume that you love in fantasy basketball. Like, I wouldn't take him number 1.
No,
in a fantasy
no.
draft.
I wouldn't either. No, I don't. And I don't think he's a top 5 pick, but I do think that he is certainly a top 10 pick.
And, like you can think yourself out of making a good decision. Like sometimes you just have to be like, oh, right, it's Kevin Durant. Like, what the fuck am I talking about?
Right.
And there are only a few players in the NBA who do have an actual chance to end up as the most valuable player in fantasy. And Kevin Durant is one of those, even with the presumed lower amount of minutes.
Yeah.
And, like all of the other players that we're going to talk about, they too are probably going to have minute restrictions, and they too probably won't play back-to-backs. And shit, man, maybe that's how every star is going to behave or be treated this year. Like everyone, we understand that this is crazy. If it's a national game, then you have to play. Otherwise, just do what your body is telling you to do. And, like Kevin Durant doesn't need to be 100% Kevin Durant to be 90% better than 90% of the rest of the league. Like he's going to have a career.
Crazy stats there.
Well, he's going to have a career. Like he can play till 45 if he wants to. That's how tall, and he's the most natural scorer in NBA history. Maybe
his game is there to like it will age nicely with him.
Yeah, everyone always says Dirk. Like he's
right,
and you can see him outperforming that. He doesn't put too much weight on his body, which is also another good thing.
Yep.
He's just goddamn. He's such a fucking slick, sweet ass player. He's so smooth. He didn't go number 1 in the draft, and it's going to be really exciting to see him in the Nets uniforms. I just feel like if you're picking 11th and Kevin Durant is there, you have to take him.
Oh my God, yeah, 100%. I mean, if you're picking 10 and Kevin,
just for the chance, like that's what. Just like in the real draft, at a certain point, it's all about not the risk, but the opportunity.
Right. What about his teammate Kyrie? What are your feelings on Kyrie for 2021? Because I'm wishy-washy on this. Yes, he is my favorite. I go back and forth as to whether or not he's a top 20 pick.
So, Kyrie in 2019-20, so last year, even though that sort of seems so long ago, he only played 20 games, but he averaged 27 plus points per game, took 7 3-point attempts per game, had a 39 3-point percentage, had 5 boards per game, which
is impressive. That's surprising.
Yeah, I like that. 6 times, a steal, only went to the line 5 times per game, but had a 92% free throw percentage. All the things we said about KD and his minutes getting handled goes for Kyrie too. Last year, Kyrie was a top 30 pick. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is all shit that I just had like in folders. Like maybe it ended up his average draft position was top 15, but there were a bunch of dudes that went before him, and he's a scoring point guard who gets you a bunch of different stats, but there are dudes that are better than him at doing those things. Like it's not like he's the number 1 point guard in fantasy.
No. And for me, the biggest thing that I'm like, after I just said, don't
take a deep breath. Oh my God.
I just said, don't worry about
Stephen Peter, calm down.
with Kevin Durant. And now I'm about to be like, I'm worried about injuries with Kyrie.
This other dude sucks though.
I'm worried about Kyrie just like missing random games, going on random periods, having maybe just like a weird relationship with Steve Nash, which is already kind of I don't know.
Jesus,
I mean,
that whole thing.
It's I just personally, I feel like Kyrie is a marvel on the court, obviously, when he is like healthy and in it and locked in and all of this jazz. It feels like a lot of things need to be right for him to be like on his game. And for me personally, there are other, especially point guards, if we're, since that's his position, if you're looking at other point guards who you're gonna kind of like be picking him over, like, I don't know. I feel like there are other guys, and one of them who we will talk about, obviously. But like, I mean, I would take Westbrook over him. I would like, I guess in my mind, and let me quickly do some stats and information while I am backing this up so I don't seem like
math sounds.
math being math. Like, would you take, I would take Trae Young over Kyrie.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, good. My math
for sure.
Played out.
Because fantasy basketball isn't real life basketball. Like
right.
Trae's going to be averaging a higher point per game than Kyrie.
And assists. He averaged 9 assists last
year,
which blew my was I didn't realize he was so high in assists.
He was the first half of last year. Oh man, that was so fucking long ago. But you know what? October feels so long ago. I know it's November, but
5 days ago feels so long ago. Each week is like a month.
We're like in that part of the Star Trek movie when they go back in time and save the whales. That's 4, right? Yeah. Whatever. Sure. It's all so weird. Anyway, Kyrie is not the best point guard. He's maybe not in the top 5. I don't know. So I completely agree with you on the structure of the Brooklyn Nets. It does sort of feel like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and they keep hiring old, Nashville, like Amari Stoudemire's there. Somebody else is there.
Who did they just hire? Yeah, they just hired someone else too.
Someone ridiculous. Like, what is going on here? And you know what? None of it fucking matters, because the way the Nets are going to end up playing is through Kevin Durant. Because Kevin Durant's on that team.
Right.
The Golden State Warriors were one of the best teams in history, and it became Kevin Durant's team. He's arguably the best player in the NBA when he's 100%. He was playing with 2 Hall of Fame shooter, like all-time best shooters ever, in Clay and Steph. Kyrie is not one of those people, even though he's super, super good. This is going to be a Durant team, and no one else is going to change that unless he's hobbled.
Yeah.
In which case, I retract everything.
It was Mike D'Antoni. Mike D'Antoni.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, what the fuck? Are you kidding me?
God.
I forgot that. Jesus. What is that? What is that? That's like,
I don't know. It's fucking incredible. I love it.
Dude, I mean,
the Nets have no idea what they're doing.
First of all, that made me think, wait, did that happen before or after Daryl in Philly? Daryl.
I feel like it happened after.
I mean, if I were Daryl Morey, I would want the guy that, seems to be considered an offensive genius to help me with this weird puzzle, but whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, well, let's talk about those 2 guys who we've mentioned many times that Kevin Durant did play with. Steph and Clay, obviously.
Right, all these guys are Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, everyone. It all comes back to Golden State Warriors. Obviously, Clay missed all of last year. Steph played 5 games and then busted his hand, and they basically just sat him out because they sucked, and they were like, let's tank for that number 1 overall pick, and they got number 2. Do you have any worries, Steph having, a rich history early in his career of injury and missing games? Do you have any worry of that kind of flaring its way back up? He played 51 games in 2017-18 and then 69 in 2018-19, and then obviously 5 in 2019-20. Does that impede your view on him at all? I think he's a top 15 pick. I would certainly take him over Kyrie, but I don't necessarily know that he is – I feel more confident in Kevin Durant coming back from injury and being the Kevin Durant of old and getting you in terms of fantasy production than I would say in terms of Steph coming back and being the Steph of old in terms of getting you fantasy production.
I think that Steph's injuries have all, like the early ankle shit, once he dealt with that, it seems like the injuries are things that are not those ankles. So I'm not that concerned. I also feel like there are few players in the NBA. I mean, LeBron James, but like Steph Curry knows his body and knows how to change it for the better. He had to do that early in his career because of his health issues, and he was great at it. So, I mean, I'm a guy that doesn't like it when pro athletes golf a lot because I think that's really bad for your back. But he seems to just be an all-around tremendous athlete, and I totally believe in Steph Curry. I think that these long layoffs are going to be really, really good for both Clay and Steph. I wouldn't be surprised if Steph is in the running for MVP this coming season.
Ooh,
like Steph
spicy.
is the guy out of all these dudes that I sort of think maybe won't have a minutes cap. Like Steph might be coming back in being like, yup, LeBron had his year. Everyone remembers. How many MVPs do I have? How many chips do I have? How good am I? Like he could storm. We talked about pissed off players before last season. I bet Steph's a little pissed off. Y'all forgot about me. Like my name, I was the face of the NBA. We've had a weird couple of years. Let's be fair. But, you know, I'm not an old man. I'm early 30s. I get to play with 2 Hall of Famers, maybe another all-star, depending on what's going on with transactions. And, I've outplayed Kawhi. I've outplayed LeBron. I don't know about this kid, Luka. Like, he seems to have gotten a lot better last year. Phoenix is dangerous, but like Steph doesn't need to be afraid of anybody. And I feel like he's going to be rip roaring this year. So he was drafted top 15, like you said, last season. And if you're a Curry believer, I think he definitely goes top 10 this year. Because if he's going for an MVP campaign, then fuck it, man. Like, what can't he do?
Shit, man. I am a sucker for narratives, and that is a really good narrative. I mean, we were on this narrative for Jimmy Buckets last year, and that Jimmy Buckets
totally
wanted just like
great
middle
point.
Fingers to the NBA all season long. And
he sure did too.
He did. He fucking carried that Heat team to the finals. God bless him. God, Steph coming into this year and just being like, the face of the NBA is such a good point because he was. Everyone was like, oh my God, Steph Curry is just shooting ridiculous threes. He's so fluid. He's so hot off the dribble. He's so sexy right now. And it's just like the guy that the NBA was all molded around. Off year, couple of weird, and he could be coming back with just a sheer vengeance. And this whole Warriors team, I think, is going to be coming back with that, like, solid determination. I had Steph I had injury concerns lingering in the back of my head, and I had that for him, keeping him as kind of a 15 just outside of round 1 if you're in a 12-player league in drafts. But shit, man, I initially was having the debate, like, do you go Russ or do you go Steph? And I think you have sold me that it is clearly Steph. Steph, if you are looking for a sexy like point guard that you can get, who I think is going to at baseline give you probably top 5 production as long as he's healthy at the point guard position, but could be just like MVP season again where he fucking averages 30 points a game like he did back in 2015-16. He's not going to do that, but doing high 20s. Yeah, Steph might be a point guard 1 this year.
Dude, and another thing is that obviously everyone coming up like knows who LeBron is and wanted to be LeBron, but everyone also came up wanting to shoot like Steph. Mm-hmm. So all these kids in the NBA and these rookies coming in this year, all of them have been taking those shots like Steph took those shots. Like everybody appreciates James Harden's technical proficiency, but he doesn't make it fun. Steph Curry is fun. Everybody wants to be like Steph, and he's going to remind people of that this year. Like, it was all of last season didn't have the best team over the last 5 years, Like, it was such a strange season where you didn't have Durant, Steph Curry, or Clay. That is it's just bonkers. Absolutely mind-boggling. It's, like in baseball when I forget what it's called, but when all the runs happen and run clustering, it's like the Golden State Warriors injury cluster was spot on. They did it great. They were like, yeah. All of you sit out, Draymond play. I don't care. We're going to have the number 2 pick and Wiggins. We can basically do whatever we want. The whole thing is ridiculous. Like, people don't talk about how nice it is for these Warriors. Because
Oh my God, the
everybody
Warriors
else
are
had to
stepping
play
into
in the bubble. The
gorgeous
fucking
situation.
Warriors didn't.
No, the Warriors are coming into, and I saw another thing, the same thing I was saying when I saw like it was like 78 games or 78 days that like the Lakers and Heat have had to rest until the NBA season starts. Whereas like non-bubble teams is like 285. And Steph and Clay have had like a year plus.
Totally.
It's going to be, this Warriors team could be a lot of fun, especially if they get, oh my God, what's the young big who everyone loves?
Oh, Wiseman.
Yeah, Wiseman. If they get someone like Wiseman, who could be I think Wiseman would fit perfectly there as someone who's really strong now. But I mean, if he develops and without pressure, like thrust upon him from day one, he could be quite devilish for that team. All right, just cutting in quickly to say we are about to take a quick ad break. All right, we're back.
Now, let me say this. Let me be devil's advocate real quick.
Love it.
If I'm Steve Kerr, Steph and Clay going at 125% right out of the gate is the last thing I want. Like they haven't played in so long. There's rust that develops on everybody. And if they push it too hard, too fast, that's how you get injured again. Just like Kevin Durant coming back early in the playoffs 2 seasons ago. And then what happened?
Yeah.
Busted his Achilles. So, like of all the teams, Golden State is going to be extremely aware of the injuries on their team. And I know I just tried to convince everyone that I think Steph is going to, play like nearly 40 minutes a game. Right. But I also feel like Kerr might ease them back in. So it's like you don't play, 30 plus minutes for the first month or something. Or there's because if you just go as hard as you fucking can, then you're just going to crash into like young dudes in baseball, young outfielders that run into the fucking wall at top speed. You're like, my man, we love you. Thank you for sacrificing your body. You're concussed. You broke your, let's
take it easy,
chill out just a second. So that's the only thing that concerns me. Like, I don't think you can take Steph Curry number 1. But he was drafted top 15 last year. You have to treat it like it's the same thing, I think.
Okay. Yeah. How do you feel about Clay? Quickly before we go on to our final two guys.
So Clay, his stats for his last year, 18, 19, 78 games played, 21 plus points per game, 7 plus threes attempted with a 40% 3-point percentage, which is the second lowest 3-point percentage of his career, by the way. So that will probably improve. 3 plus boards, 2 plus dimes, 1 plus steals. He's just so goddamn solid. All of those things were happening with Kevin Durant on the team. Now that he's gone, depending on the personnel for the Warriors, I think his stats will go up, and I think his efficiency will improve. I think that Clay is the same as he was 2 years ago, which is like, if he's your second or third draft pick, you're totally happy with it.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah.
What do you think about Clay?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think was thinking that he's probably about a top 30 pick, which means you're getting him in the middle of that third round if you're in a 12-player league.
Yeah.
Which I think that makes sense. Yeah, I don't think you're not drafting him to be your number 1. I would be hesitant to have him be my number 2, but I think number 3 is the sweet spot for him. I do like the idea of him having a scoring increase without Durant. It is kind of crazy that he hasn't played. We haven't seen him play without Durant. It feels like so long that Durant hasn't been with the Warriors, and yet they just, because he missed an entire year, we haven't seen a Durantless Klay Thompson and what that ultimately does for him. I would like to see. I mean, his defensive numbers are good, and I think a lot of the stuff we see isn't exactly registered. He did have actually his career high in steals last year with 1.1 per game. So that's something.
But that's also because Durant is there, and it's like, okay, now the best perimeter player is not your assignment. Like, the thing about Clay is that I've always believed that if he were on a team by himself like the Knicks, he'd be a perennial MVP candidate. Clay is there for the playoffs almost more than Steph is, because Clay's the one, especially now that Durant is gone, like, you get the toughest defensive assignment, dude. Like, you're going to be guarding the best guys on the other team, depending on size, obviously. So I almost wonder whether they'll protect Clay more than Steph, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that could make sense. And I think that would also then play into making sure that, like, I think if he's your third or fourth guy, now you have those two top guys locked into your team. You're not relying on Clay. If he does start slow, or if he is, like, pretty limited for that first part of the season, then it's not like, shit, one of my top two guys is underperforming. It's more of like, okay, I can weather the storm of Clay before everything clicks into gear and he's firing on all cylinders.
Now, let me give you my sales pitch for saying, fuck that, Clay's going to go off this year.
Perfect.
Durant is gone.
Yep.
Clay isn't as old as people think he is. Like, everyone keeps thinking he's like 2 years older than he is. He's also like the only motherfucker in the NBA that can score 40 points in a quarter or whatever the fuck he did in that crazy.
A hot Klay Thompson is a sight to behold. That is
it's
a drop
craziest scoring.
Turn on the
TV. Yeah. Like, it's way more impressive than anything Harden's done over the course of it, because it seems like it's lightning in a bottle. But shit, man. Like, if Durant's gone and we need this, maybe it isn't. Maybe he has more games like that. So he is definitely a player that can have a miraculous offensive output. It's just that that's not what the Warriors have ever needed him to do. But maybe this year changes.
Maybe. All right.
He's so sick. God.
He is so sick. And I do love defense. Natty, what can we expect from John Wall this year? Please tell me. I have no idea.
More sweaty pictures.
Part of
like
me,
more hungover, just like, wow. Oh, my
part
head
of me
hurts.
is like all here for the John Wall double machine back in 2014 to 2017, where he was averaging like 20 points a game, 10 rebounds a game, giving you 5 boards like that. I would love to see that John Wall, but I also just I don't know. My worry is that John Wall is going to go the route of Derrick Rose, where because he was such an explosive player and he's lost that now, or he has the potential to have lost that now, that it's going to take a little bit of time for him to kind of rediscover what his offense is without that explosiveness. He's never been that great a 3-point shooter. I mean, he's shooting about 30% on his career with only 2 to 3 attempts per game. So I don't know, that part of his game isn't so developed that I feel like he can quickly rely on that as opposed to driving and kind of scoring inside the paint. But he is someone who I feel like you could draft at, get him at a pretty good discount, and he could either be worth at that discount, or he could just everything could click. He could be the John Wall of old, and suddenly you're getting yourself a top 3 fantasy point guard on your hand, or a top 5 fantasy point guard on your hands.
He's always been a little discounted about the dimes, which doesn't really make sense. Like his last, in 2018-19, 32 games, he averaged 8+ dimes a game. So
he averages 9 on his career.
Yeah, he's a really good distributor. It might be that the scoring comes down, and so he's a little bit more like Ricky Rubio, where you're not there to score. The thing about driving to the hoop is that last year, or 2018-19, he had his lowest free throw percentage of his career. He's a mid-70s for his career, and it was 69. That's
not nice.
It's not great. You could slap me across the face and say, yeah, that means it's going to rebound. But I could also, with tears in my eyes, say, but what if that's the start of going down? If he's not going to drive and he can't shoot from outside, then you're a little bit of a limited fantasy player.
Yeah.
So while I love Dr. John Wall, and he was one of the most exciting players in the NBA, you're right. If he doesn't have that burst, he will be less effective, less dangerous. It's also going to be a weird roster in DC, I think. And Beal is now the alpha. So if Wall is, the distributor behind Beal and Beal is the real scoring threat, then maybe that helps John Wall's efficiency improve but his volume might go down. On the other hand, it's been a long time off for him too. Maybe he comes back, maybe he's healed, maybe he's 20 plus points a game again. It's just hard to draft him in a spot where you're not drafting for the upside and getting a bargain. You know what I mean? It's drafting him as your second or third player is just asking to be disappointed.
Yes.
But after that, getting on in the rounds, hey, why not? I mean, there are players that I'd rather bet on his upside and his competency, especially with the assists, and his floor for scoring won't be that low.
Right.
It's not like he's going to score 9 points a game.
Right. Exactly. I don't think it's going to drop below 15. I would be surprised if
agree.
Scoring under 15 a game.
And
but
maybe
you could get a 15 and 10 stat line, which, hey, that's
sure
fantastic,
especially in double leagues. So,
yep.
I agree with you that I think his game will have changed and he will have to change with it. I also got to say though that it's DC's so weird. It could just be Ball and Wheel, and Wall and Beal. That's the second fucking time I've messed things up today. Been a long day. Sorry.
I mean, I just want to say that if anyone is looking for a good cop show,
Ball and Wheel. There you go.
Ball and Wheel seems like an excellent name for a cop show.
Fact. Absolutely. It also depends on what they do with the Latvian laser. That team, if you have serious shooting around Wall, then maybe that really improves him and he gets back to what he used to be. If Boogie Cousins signed there and they were just shoot from outside, we don't need you to be an interior presence as much, then, maybe that would be great for Wall. But just like you said, you have to be wary of the diminution of his earlier potency.
Yeah. What a natural and brilliant transition you just threw out there, Natty, because the last player we're going to talk about coming off of major injury is the aforementioned DeMarcus Boogie Cousins. Currently a free agent, doesn't have a team. Obviously, your fantasy value, I don't know if you knew this, Natty, is slightly capped if you don't actually play basketball, if you don't have a team to play for. However, I feel like it's not going out on a limb saying that DeMarcus Cousins will be signed by some team at the start of the 2021 season. Assuming he is, what is your feeling on him? Because, I mean, you can say that we haven't seen DeMarcus Cousins in a long time, but when we have seen him, I mean, his last year with Golden State, he played, or 2018-19, with Golden State, played 30 games, averaged 16 a game, 8 rebounds, almost 4 assists while shooting not great from 3. But if you go the year back when he was on the Pelicans, the Pelicans year was incredible for him. 48 games, 25 points, 12 boards, 5 assists, shooting 35% from 3, taking 6 attempts per game. If that version of DeMarcus Cousins, what we saw in Golden State was
3+ stocks per game. I mean,
yeah. What we saw in Golden State was post Achilles, because he tore his Achilles, and that's what ended the time with the Pelicans. But man, if he can come anywhere near that Pelicans version of himself, he's going to be another guy that you can probably get at a pretty good discount, especially if he's one of these situations. If you're drafting, given how compressed the offseason is going to be, if you're drafting in a couple of weeks, you want to have a couple of weeks ahead of the NBA season to kind of get your shit in order, and he's not on a team yet, you will probably be able to get him at quite a good discount for what he could be. But the question is whether or not realistically, what are his numbers going to be?
So last year, around 35 players averaged 20 plus points per game, and around 40 players averaged 5 dimes per game. That's a player that DeMarcus can be.
Yeah.
He doesn't even need to be at his apex to get the volume and the numbers. And if he's put in the right context, like if he's not going to be a backup for Golden State, if a team actually like gives him a 3-year deal and says, yes, you start for us, we love you, then I don't see why he can't score 20 points and grab 10 rebounds per game and do all these other things. I mean, he did those stats with the Brow on his team. Like, he can play with another big. Now, Anthony Davis is not just any other big, obviously. Like, one of the landing spots for Boogie, we have no idea what a contract for him would look like. But, like, would he look good in Minnesota playing with Cat? Are Cat and the Brow, similar to play with for another big? Would having another scorer there, if that's what Boogie still is, be helpful for Minnesota to get to the playoffs? There are a lot of teams that are extremely interesting, even for a 75% Boogie. Like a 75% Boogie on Boston as their starting center is interesting.
Dude,
a 75%.
I have wanted Boogie on the Celtics. I just have wanted Boogie on the Celtics for so long. Like, totally. I absolutely love Boogie as a player and as a person, honestly, too. Like, I love the fact that he just constantly called out the Sacramento Kings for being completely dysfunctional. If they got Boogies, it does feel like kind of a move that maybe the Celtics would do, where it's like you get a potential top 5 big for a super big discount, and you're like, Brad Stevens, go milk the best out of him, which Brad can do. But yes, anyways, I had to say that I stand.
Dude, that's why I said it, because that's a wet green dream right there. Like, that would look so fucking good. And we're not going to talk about the playoffs. That's not what we're talking about. Like, this is signing a guy at a discount depending on what his actual production becomes. But like, he can stretch the floor a little bit. He's a fun player. And a team like Boston, who has a front court depth, but there isn't really a star there. Like, maybe he's the straw that stirs the drink. And maybe, you can keep the younger guys. And so like Time Lord, plays more and Boogie doesn't have to play as much. Depending on what Toronto does with Serge and Marc Gasol, like Boogie in Toronto is interesting. I told you earlier, like, why shouldn't Atlanta just throw him a 3-year deal? Like, here's some money. We have all this cap space. I would like to see what you and Trey look like together.
Yep.
I think the most dangerous, though, like, everyone is like, oh yeah, we'll sign with the Lakers. And like, yeah, maybe for sure. But Dallas. Dallas.
Okay. Yeah, tell me more.
Like, that right there, you're not asking to play Twin Towers. You're saying we always have an elite big out here, no matter what. And maybe we mix and match depending on the opponent. Sometimes you start, sometimes you don't. If we're playing the Lakers, maybe starting the Unicorn and Boogie at the same time makes sense.
Put the
I don't know.
At the 4 and Boogie at the 5. Yeah.
Or do what you want. Like, at that point, like, the numbers that designate the positions don't even matter. You know, it's like you're just sort of building a fucking wall, right? Just like Stan Van Gundy said. Like, and that's the size of the Lakers has scared the rest of the league. And so I do think that there are teams out there who are going to be like, you know what? We need more front court depth. And maybe that's why the Cavs are playing 4D chess and have all of the fucking front. But they were. They're stupid. They're terrible. But Boogie, like, let's say that the market is super cold on Boogie and he can't get a starting job. A team like Phoenix would be extremely interesting for him. You back up Ayton, like you could be the focal point of the offense if you want to when you come off the bench. I really kind of don't like him with the Clippers, but I'm sure it would work out fine. A team that no one ever talks about is the Spurs. It would be kind of incredible to see Boogie with Pop. Washington, Miami is interesting, but all of this is dependent on how much money he can actually get. Like, if the Pacers, well, they don't have any money, but if the Pistons were like, hey, here's more money than Atlanta, than everybody else is willing to give you, and it's a multiple-year contract, and you can demand a trade, and maybe we just want to sign you to trade you anyway. Like, why shouldn't he say yes? So there's the opportunity cost for that. Like, he might have a bunch of suitors, but I don't know how high the money's going to go. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think ultimately, regardless of where he ends up, he's worth taking a flyer on later in your drafts, because of what we've seen in the past, because how good he could be, and because ultimately, I feel like, especially with his track record of injuries recently, and kind of off the court issues, however blown up out of proportions those might have been by the Kings, or exacerbated by the Kings, I feel like a team is going to sign Boogie with a plan for him, and that plan obviously worked when he joined the Pelicans, and so I would trust a team that took him to have a plan for Boogie's, have a role that Boogie's buying into, and that being fantasy relevant. So,
and Boogie's not bullshit from outside, but he has a really bad reputation, but a lot of that was due to the Kings being awful.
The Kings are fucking trash, so let's not hype, put this all
for sure. And they were changing coaches all the time. Yeah, they just treated him really, really badly. He showed that he can play with another star in New Orleans. He showed that he can take a back seat and try to prove it with the Golden State Warriors.
Yep.
So I kind of feel like all he needs now are the minutes to prove everything else. And there will be a team out there that is willing to give him those minutes, depending on how crazy shit gets and how much money's going around. And, if there's not really a contract to his liking, then maybe he goes back to Golden State and has a bigger role there. And is, like we lost Durant, but maybe we gained a Boogie.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we go, I do want to quickly say, sadly, some bad news came across the basketball world today. Celtics legend Tommy Heinsohn passed away at 86 years old. So I quickly just wanted to pay some respects to a guy who obviously I never saw play, and I didn't see coach, but I did see him as a commentator. And there were very few things I loved more in a Celtics game when I would yell at my TV at a terrible call I thought the refs made, only to hear Tommy Heinsohn yell at the refs even louder, and to a national audience about how wrong the refs were. It is pretty crazy to think that the Celtics have been around for 74 years, and Tommy was a part of that team for 62 of those years as a player, a coach, and a broadcaster. He should be and will likely be a 3-time Hall of Famer as a player, coach, and broadcaster. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time to pay some respects to him, and how much his voice, his energy, his blatant homerism was a really monumental part of my enjoyment for the Boston Celtics in these recent years. Giving IT the nickname "the little guy" is just incredible, and will always stick with him and stick with Celtics fans. So pouring some out for him and remembering the best of Tommy Heinsohn today.
R.I.P. indeed. As a Pistons fan, I love George Blaha. Everyone needs more Blaha. And, announcers are with you a lot when you're a sports fan. You hear their voices a lot. You hear what they think a lot. And the ones that actually, touch you and that you feel simpatico with, those guys are always remembered. Just like Ernie with the Tigers.
Yeah.
So it's sad. He lived a long life, Boston legend, and rest in peace.
Amen. All right. Well, with that, we are done for today. Make sure you subscribe to the Fake Teams podcast, wherever you get your podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. That's how you'll not only get us, but also our fantasy baseball and football podcasts. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at The Long Two Podcast. We will be back at you next week as we closer approach a wild 2021 NBA season and 2021 NBA offseason. Natty, until then, have a good week and stay safe.
You do the same. Everybody email your leagues because this shit's going to happen fast. So get ready. Have a good week, Pete. Stay safe.